Okay, so good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock here in Atlanta. I am Waukesha Howe, a community champion here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we are here with my lovely co-host, Miss Sherelle, and we are interviewing or having a conversation with Miss Tamara Jones, who is running for the at-large school board seat 7. Okay, um, and so I have an icebreaker. Let me say this before the icebreaker though. We are not bought and paid by nobody. Nobody. These are just regular community folks, parents who are just willing to have a conversation with the candidates. And so we're gonna save this. You can watch the replay. So Tamara, I have an icebreaker. This is a really good one. So get ready.
Okay.
Where is it? What did you have to give up to achieve your current level of success?
Oh, a lot of sleep, like a lot of sleep. Um, I don't know. Architecture school is so time consuming. So between the school and then just all the hours, it was just a whole lot of not sleeping. I don't recommend it. I really don't. But that would be the number one thing I would say is
Sleep.
sleep.
And sleep is important. That's
Oh, you
really
you know, you
important.
can't live without it. And eventually you come to that realization that you can't stretch yourself that far.
Mm-hmm.
And that everybody around you suffers, including you, when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the perception that it got me to my level of success is probably mistaken on my part. But um, yeah, and it also depends on what you mean by success, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So
because there's a lot more to success than just what you do at a job or how much money you make. It's,
mm-hmm.
how you feel. Do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel like
Mm-hmm.
you're flourishing? And that's the kind of success I wish for all of our kids in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I appreciate that. That's our icebreaker. It's gonna be for everybody. I want to ask you this for the people who don't know you. Who are you? Where you from?
So, okay, Tamara Jones. I was born in Rome, Georgia. So I'm a multi-generation Georgian. I went to elementary school in Cartersville, Georgia. And then I went to middle school in New Jersey and high school in Connecticut. So I attended public schools in 3 different states. Um, Came back to Atlanta to go to graduate school at Georgia Tech to study to be an architect and an urban planner. And I've lived here for the last 30 plus years. Um, I've worked in architecture and urban planning for most of that time. I have 3 kids, which is what got me here, serving on the Board of Education. I This is my 17th year as an APS parent, and so I got involved in the school system back under Dr. Hall. So it's been a minute, and got very involved in their schools at the time, working on local school councils, PTA, PTO, cluster advisory teams, go teams, SPLOST oversight committee. That was for many years, at the district executive committee. And we did a little stint with the Excellent Schools Committee. So one of the best things about serving for that long on these bodies was that, especially at the district level, working hand in hand with people all across the city, all different clusters, was the most rewarding and I think fruitful thing that I did. And so when I kept seeing, am I going into another question now? When I kept seeing over and over again the same issues, no matter which leadership we had, in APS, I thought, maybe it is time. I think I have something to offer, to give back to the system that helped raise my kids, in the city that helped raise my kids. So they went to APS from kindergarten all the way through graduation. Um, and I decided to run for school board, because I really thought that the things that I saw that could be fixed or shored up were systemic and not necessarily unique to one part of the city or one cluster or just one group of students. So that's why I chose to run for a citywide seat. And I still remember one of my advisors, when I told her what I was doing, she was like, "You've never run for office before. Why are you running citywide?" I said, "Because these are the things I care about. And this is where I think that we really need the help." Um, I love the work. I love doing this work. I'm not planning on running for any other office.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I just want to continue to do this work. Been focused on the things that I said I was running on the last time, the whole
Mm-hmm.
time I've been on the board, and just want to keep doing it.
Well, that was my next question. Why are you running? So you already answered that one. So I wanted to ask you something. You mentioned small schools.
Small
What
school. Did I mention small schools?
what what was the school you said? Working with the PTA, PTOs, and what was the other one?
Oh, the Excellent Schools
Excellent
Committee.
school. Okay, what
Yes,
is that actually?
that was something that got brought in. Gosh, I want to say it was like 2016 or 17. I can't remember the exact year.
Okay.
Where it was an effort to try to get, figure out how do we make all of our schools great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think where it started to go a little bit off track was there were agendas that came in to it.
Okay.
There were particular models that people were trying to promote, the portfolio school model. Um,
Oh, okay. I heard of that.
yes, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I think that we came out of it with some, positive, ways of, how we can improve schools in Atlanta, but
Mm-hmm.
also recognizing that Atlanta's solution is going to be Atlanta's solution. It's not going to be anything that anybody's promoting, from, nationally or anything like that. Atlanta is uniquely Atlanta. Atlanta Public
Mm-hmm.
Schools is uniquely us. And that is where we need to focus. We don't need to try to emulate anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do agree. We are totally different in so many ways. And I know we was just talking about the different clusters, you mentioned it. And so I know I'm a parent. I have kids that graduated from the Washington cluster, the Carver cluster. I have a brother that just graduated from the Grady cluster. I have a sister graduated from the Carver cluster this year coming up. And so I can say that one thing we did was we made sure in our cluster that our schools were on one accord. Because if you look at APS, it seemed like the school be competing sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
what we did was we brought all of our principals together. It was a group of us, the principals, parent, and community members, and we made sure we were, one cluster, one family, and that really just set the tone for the whole cluster. And I'm happy to see that other clusters are doing it. Could you talk about some other work that you're doing um as a school board member, because you're the current school board member right
Mm-hmm.
now? Could you talk about some more work you're doing at this moment?
Well, the couple of things that I'm working on right now, very hard and heavy, are the literacy policy. Trying to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that the board has a policy around literacy that helps guide the administration so that we can get all of our kids reading. That has been the problem. One of the hugest problems over all these last 20 years or so is we have gotten used to the idea that 2/3 of our kids are not going to read proficiently, and that's unacceptable. And, we know that all kids can be taught how to read, and we just need to step up to the plate and do it. And so understanding that it hasn't been done is what makes me and, also board member Mitchell and, other people on the policy committee know that we have to have a policy so that we can weed out ineffective practices. So policy is a big one for me. What you talked about with the clusters, trying to get clusters to come together and work together like y'all did in Washington with the one cluster, one family. I do see the potential for that happening in several other clusters right now. Just last night, I was over in the Douglas cluster, talking to some people in West Highlands. And I really think that cluster is poised, to take off, and get all people working together. And, I sensed a lot of excitement, in that room. And of course, we have Carver, we know that we've got a lot of proponents for Carver, that we need to, make that one really one Carver, like really one Carver cluster. And I'm excited about that. So got that going on. Yeah, obviously, I've been working on the our surplus properties and trying to make sure that we have a very fair and transparent process. When we decide what to do with public property, because that doesn't belong to me. That belongs to the taxpayers of the city. That belongs to you guys. And it's very important to me that we do that all in the up and up. Gosh, what else can I say?
I
Here
want to ask
again,
you. I want
yeah,
to ask you
oh,
another one. Because I see you here a lot, and this is my space. If you know me, I'm super engaged. I'm always at the Go Team meetings. I see you at the CAT meetings a lot. Um, what are some ways that we can improve the CAT meeting? Because what I was hoping is this year I'm always right there with Diane and Carol and Chandra, and so because I go to all the meetings, hint hint. Um,
you're
how
probably
can
on
we?
another meeting right now, right?
That's very possible. It's very very possible. But how can we get more engagement? Because what people don't understand about the Go Team is that the Go Team is for all of us. The CAT is for all of us. They have their bodies, their functioning bodies, their rules and bylaws and stuff like that. But we're all invited. We all can do public comment. How can we improve that engagement? I'm working. I'm going to the meetings. I'm telling people. I'd be like, hey, it's a meeting. You heard it's a meeting. This what's going on. I do that myself. I'm just one person. That's all. But how can we improve that engagement? Because I do see you at those meetings a lot.
And that's a great way for an at-large board member to get their finger on the pulse of what's going on with all the different clusters. Because you can go to the cluster advisory teams and sort of see, okay, here are the issues that they're talking about in there. You're right. I mean, I don't think that people are not viewing that as a public forum for them to get involved in. And that is a big opportunity for us and something that I've been arguing for, when I ran the last time, right? That we're underutilizing that body, the cluster advisory team, because that, to your point about the cluster synergy, that's where you get to talk to people from the different schools that are in your cluster. That's where you get to see your community members and ask for their help, and ask for their opinions and their advice. What we have to do, in my opinion, and this is something that I would work for, I'm still trying to work on, is make sure that that body and the go teams are turned back into the advisory bodies that the state requires under state law, the way that local school councils were before we shifted over to the cluster, not cluster, it was the charter system model. We need to give those bodies their voice back and trust them, and stop having them be so scripted and let the dialogues flow. So the other piece that I think would be important is, and I've painted this analogy before, the go teams are a lot like neighborhood organizations, right? Because the school and the neighborhood are kind of, and then the cluster advisory teams are a lot like your NPUs. And really, we should be trying to cross pollinate those things, because I do think that the community, even people who don't have kids in the schools, would step up to the plate to support the cluster, if we were to try to get those bodies involved with each other. So I think that's a huge opportunity. Yeah.
So I want to say too, for the record, I have also seen you engage in the education committee. That is where me and Miss Cher Belia serves as chairs and vice chairs of APAB education committee, and that is
Yes.
with the city of Atlanta. So we have seen you in those meetings. So I really do appreciate that, because to your point, by me going to the Go Teams and um the CAT meetings, I do see some similarities. And I always tell teachers, most definitely, y'all come to the meeting. They're like, no,
Hmm.
that's not for me. No, it's for you. You can
It
be in.
is.
And I do think we have the right leader. I think Dr. Battle is the right one. So kudos to you guys for making that transition. Um, I think she is the one that can help change, how people view, and she can most definitely make people feel more comfortable about going and being a part. You're not just a teacher, you're a part of this decision making as
Right.
well. So I really think that y'all did a great job with choosing her to come in and most definitely um just navigate these next couple of months. And I might say something to her about that, like we can really take, and I've already said this, to be honest, I said this to Travis and Keisha, my favorite people. You can use the Go Team for a way to engage parents, get information out to the community. Like I've already lifted up, they're figuring out how they look and how to make that happen. But we are in conversation and we're talking to each other. So I do want to say how Travis and Keisha came in and they was ready, to do some work. And they not scared to come in the community and talk to the families. If you guys don't know, there is I want to say it may be called Golden Guardrails, like after conversation, after the board meeting.
Tomorrow at noon. Yes.
That's right. That's right. So if y'all have opportunity, you can get on there and ask Travis and Keisha questions about whatever happened in the board meeting. They can explain some things to the community. And this is just one way to get involved and have your voice lift up as a parent, community member, taxpayer. It's a really great opportunity. I've been in maybe one or two already. I plan on going tomorrow. But I really appreciate you guys doing that because that was an awesome opportunity to engage. And I think we most definitely can lift up engagement with the Go Teams and the CAT. You're a PTA mom, a PTO mom as well. So I know there's a lot of engagement there. I'm the same. So I know there's a lot of opportunities for us as parents to be engaged. We just have to know about them. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to the beautiful Miss Sherelle. Miss Sherelle, do you have any questions?
I don't know why you turned over to me so early, but I appreciate that. Good morning, good afternoon, I should say, Miss Jones.
Good afternoon.
I know it. I know it. In the time flying. I guess my question is, you are already representing the District 7. So for those who don't know, what district would that be? What schools would that include?
So District 7 is, it comprises school board districts 1 and 2. So Katie Howard's zone and Aretta Baldwin's zone. So it just means you have to live in that area to be able to run for this at-large seat. So it's an at-large seat, meaning everyone in the city can vote for seat 7, same as 8 and 9. So we are elected by the entire city, not just one region. So we just have to live in that region to be able to run for it. And the idea there is so that you don't have, all the at-large seats being from Buckhead, for instance. Nothing wrong with Buckhead, but just so that we make sure that there's representation from different parts of the city.
So are you able to share what schools would be included?
They're all my schools. They're all, everything is, yeah.
Right.
So
yeah.
So in districts 1 and 2, you're going to have, most of the, you've got the Midtown cluster, you've got the Jackson cluster, some of the Carver cluster, you've got the Washington cluster, some of the little of the Douglas, little of the Douglas, little of the Maine. So that is, so all the schools that are in there. But when we talk about whose schools, those are usually the district reps. So, so they're all my schools and all my kids.
Oh, wonderful. I like hearing that. So I'm going to jump in this one right here. It says that high tides raises all ships. So the thought behind that statement, please tell us what you would do as a board member to ensure that all public school systems is truly inclusive indeed and not just in policy.
So one of the things I like to talk about is what I view as the purpose of education, right? And to me, the purpose of education is the cultivation or the promotion of human flourishing, meaning we want every child, every person to have an opportunity to live a life that is fulfilling, and that reaches their own goals. And if you believe that that's the purpose of public education, then it requires each and every one of us to care very deeply about the opportunities and exposures, knowledge, and that everybody in the city has available to them. And when we get to that mindset about how if this is not zero sum, it's not competitive. Public education is not about, becoming more competitive so you can beat out somebody else for a job. It really is about, making it so that, all of our fellow citizens are living happy and healthy lives, and that can make their life fulfilling. So to that end, one of the things I've been promoting is having us come up with some more nimble and innovative way that every child, can reach their fullest potential no matter what door they walk into a building through, right? And we learned a lot from the pandemic. We learned that we can do hybrid classes. We learned that, there's some super offerings on Georgia Virtual School. We learned that we can share the wealth, so to speak. And that when we do that, everybody has more opportunities. You don't have to take something away from someone to make other people whole. And I think that having that mindset and always looking for that way to get to yes, for everyone is the key. I mean, that's the way you achieve equity, is by really giving everyone what they need,
I appreciate that answer. I didn't anticipate that one, but
Oh.
I'm glad you put it in that fashion, because truly, you don't have to take away from one to make the other one to be important. And the other one doesn't have to be pointed out as the bad in order to find the good in someone else. So I certainly appreciate that. As relates to the school board has what they call goals and guardrails. And I know APS has been talking about them lately. What I've been talking about for years, really. But what we've often gone in and we've changed those goals and guardrails, but this time around, it kind of took me by surprise to see that some would want to, and I'm going to term it for lack of a better term, dumb the goals and guardrails down. So, let me ask you to speak on whether or not you would be for having a greater expectation for students, or would you be for looking at communities and saying that those communities can only do what they can do, and so let's just dumb down the guardrails? Or would you expect for students to rise to the occasion?
Well, I am on record, saying that I didn't think that we needed to be changing our goals, because I think, yes, we have to be realistic, but at the same time, we have to have high expectations for our students. We just because we're not doing the work right does not mean they can't do that work. And I think we set expectations on the wrong set of people. We try to think of it in terms of kids when we're really talking about ourselves. Ourselves as the people that are supposed to be teaching them. We need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And so when that conversation took place about, lowering the goals, particularly around reading, I was the one who said, I don't agree. I don't think we should do this. I made a motion to table it. So no, I don't believe that we need to lower the goals for our kids. I do think we need to get more specific. One of the problems I think with our goals is that they're just so broad that, it encourages an administration to just throw things at the wall to see what sticks. And I would like to see us get much more focused with our goals, particularly, when it comes to reading, teaching kids how to read, reading proficiency, and focusing a lot. When you talk about, rising tide floats all boats, if we focus very hard on the kids who struggle the most in reading, everybody else will benefit. And I think if we just need to have more expectations for ourselves as adults, and stop putting it on the kids.
Now that's an answer that I can agree with, and I certainly do like. And I am a proponent and believe that if you engage students with disabilities, I think that every student in the entire school would benefit from whatever programs that the students with disability are being addressed by and with. So
Yes.
I'm glad you said that. So my question to you now is, how would you galvanize your colleagues to ensure that students with disabilities are not only included in the higher form of education opportunities, but that they are also included in being prepared to graduate ready for life, career, and post-secondary education, should they choose?
This is important, right? And so the conversation came up, and I remember some of the comments that I made when the whole the vote around tapestry, was up on the table. And I made the comment that we as a board, we as a school district, need to go back and re-examine our commitment to our kids that have the greatest needs, and refocus, reprioritize, and put the money into doing that, because I think we've lost our way when it comes to that. We need to learn more. One of the things that I talked about with the tapestry thing is, just because we don't open, we can't just open a school for every need that we have, a brand new school. But what we can do is learn from the best practices or things that have worked, in an environment like that, and figure out, you know, do we need to strategically partner with someone or consult with someone to teach us how to do that, to provide that opportunity for more kids within APS, um, than just a handful of kids who happen to get into that school. Um, so I do that. When you talk about building consensus, it takes time. One thing you can't do is just charge in like a bull in a china shop. I know that, some people want change to happen overnight, and you think if you just get somebody who charges in it's going to bully somebody into believing something. That doesn't happen. This isn't Congress, this is school board, right? Um, we have to convince hearts and minds, and that comes a little bit at a time. You can't force somebody to do things. And, that's another thing that I think is a benefit of me on the school board, is that I can't be bullied. So, and I want to set a much different tone.
Oh, Ms. House, that sounds like a great response, because you're right. A lot of parents and community leaders and people who are onlookers think that you can go in like a bull in a china shop, and sometimes it takes just one step at a time in order to achieve. And so with that said, my next question is as a candidate and an incumbent, um, more specifically as relates to special education, what will you do to affect the educational disparities, the educational violations of students with disabilities in the 87 APS learning sites?
So if you talk about the missing opportunities that they had, like what they didn't get that they need to get, basically restitution for, that is something that has come up, in our conversations, a little bit on the dais, but more, in the background, just talking about how we have not served, our students with special needs, particularly through the pandemic. And we have to figure out how we make that right. And no, it's not a matter of just, people suing us and having to settle that. It's our moral obligation, to meeting kids where they are. So I am in favor, of, providing compensatory services, but also, making sure that we budget, in some of the things we have to provide can be expensive. Some of the full-time nurses, some of the the tutoring, but we have to commit to doing it, because as you say, that when you do right by the people that need the most, um, everyone benefits. And I think it's that zero-sum mindset, that I think we have to get over. That idea that if we give more, if we pay more attention to the kids with special needs, that it's somehow going to take away from somebody else. And to me, that's a mistaken idea.
Boy, I tell you, the first half was good, but this is even better than the first half. So I thank you for being personable in your responses and being honest, because those are the type of conversations that the community is looking for. They're not looking for textbook or scripted answers, but true responses as relates to real time and real problems. So with that being said, I know that APS has several committees, several boards, and we're trying to get the community engaged. So I guess I'm looking to find out two things. How do you see your next term as relates to engaging the community on a grassroots level? And how can the board be more inviting to having parents or community leaders or community stakeholders be a part of the community, be a part of the conversation as relates to policies that may be beneficial for the entire city?
So I will say that I don't think that the 2 minutes of public comment before the board meeting in the afternoons once a month is productive. I don't really consider that engagement. I mean, technically it is, but by the time somebody gets up there to spend their 2 minutes, they felt unheard for a long time, usually. So what I keep trying to do, and we've made some changes this year. So Board Member Howard and I were committed to trying to expand opportunities for people to talk to board members. We've added some regional meetings that we'll be having, in different quadrants of the city, so that we can get together in person. Then district members are going to have their every other monthly board meeting. We need things to be more predictable. Like, we need people to know, here's how you interact with your board. It can't just be people who have personal relationships with the board member. People who feel comfortable and who have my cell phone number could give me a call. Because when we focus so much on that kind of personality and personal accessibility, it favors people over other people. And what we really have to do is put in place these things like we were talking about, like Waukesha was talking about, these making the Go teams really inclusive, a real place for conversation, making the cluster advisory teams that real level of conversations, making the district executive committee a standing committee. Right now it's an ad hoc committee, so clusters aren't like constantly learning from each other. Making it look, because people, quite frankly, in the city of Atlanta, they understand their NPU system. We've known it for a long time. And I serve on the joint committee with the city council. And one of the things I did say to them is when we were talking about this updated board engagement policy, I mentioned, the cluster advisory teams and how similar they were to the NPUs, and that we need to find a way to get these entities to working together, so that we broaden the conversation. And so people recognize that there are ways, their board members are accessible, and you don't have to have a personal in or know somebody, or because what I want to do is create, I don't need to, I've told people this before, I don't want to be somebody else's microphone. I want to build that microphone, that table, and hand it over for people to talk. And when I do that, I can go away and turn over this keys from this board member seat to someone else, knowing that people are going to have their voice heard and that they don't have to rely on me to speak it for them. That's, I think, what we have to get to. I mean, us politicians, and quite frankly, one of the problems I think we've had too often on our school board is people who do school board to get to a next political position. And being the most important person, being the people, perceiving that you speak for other people is something that they need to have. Taking credit for things, like they want to take credit for stuff so that they can get on to their next position. And I think that hurts us as a school board. It hurts the community. It hurts the neighborhoods. It hurts the families, the teachers, for us school board members as would-be politicians to drive things with our ego that way.
I see Miss Howell shaking her head, boy. I totally
Listen,
agree.
you know that is my area, because if it's one thing I cannot, it's the politics. I cannot do it. It makes me disgusting. I'm so glad you brought that up, because for so many times, and I say it publicly, people use these positions to step up in another space. And I'm happy that the community is at a point where we're saying, listen, you got to come talk to us, because we're not just going to vote for you because of who you are, who you know, how popular you are. Like, we really need to know if you're going to work in the best interest of us, because at the end of the day, it's about the people and not you and the position or title you hold to further another agenda. Like, we are past that. We are really past that. Miss Sherelle, I just wanted to lift that up. Sorry.
Oh no, I appreciate her response, because we were all thinking it, but the elephant was in the room. So thank you. I guess I had two questions. The other one is, you have a student governance committee.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed in a lot of things, including as relates to students with disability, if no one knows, and I'm watching, and they will watch this back again, I'm all about students with disability, so I make no apologies for that. And they have been marginalized for centuries. Not just for the school year. My son graduated with 2022, which is, I think we need to still have a target 2022. And that's not my personal opinion. I think it should be happening, since they spent the longest time in the pandemic and received the least amount of support. But I noticed on the school governance board, there is not anybody representing that population. And also too, I noticed that the board spend the least amount of time talking about students with disabilities. The other thing I've noticed is that the superintendents that we bring in, you have some that may mention it only because a parent asked, but it doesn't seem to be a part of their plan to address, because that is one of the biggest areas in at least in APS, and I could probably say in the state of Georgia. But and particularly I'm talking about APS because that's where we're located, and that's where you're looking to reclaim that seat, and I'm hoping that you do so as well. But as relates to students with disabilities and people in that special population, how are you going to make them? Because at some point we got to start including them into the conversation. I know that people who have challenges have limited abilities, but at some point we're going to have to start including, like I also, even in the board meeting, we don't have anybody that signed. There are people who are deaf who would love to participate. You have people who would love to participate who have cognitive disabilities. You have people who are blind or are partially blind or considered classified as blind. So how are we going to start including those people in this community?
You make a lot of really good points. And while we've made a little bit of headway in trying to be more inclusive in our public meetings, putting them in different languages, trying to put, have interpreters, you're right. We don't reach everyone. And one of our goals when it came to equity and inclusion was to include everyone. I think we haven't focused enough on, the differently abled. And when you say about the student advisory council, um, I don't know if they have something where they are trying to have one of their members serve that population. You probably know about more than I do. But what I can say is that every time I've gone to breakfast with the board, when they present, and bring the students in, your heart would be warmed the way they advocate for their fellow students with disabilities. It happens at every single school. They come in and they advocate for them. And I'm proud of a lot of our young people for, shaking us up as adults. So that is something that I'll take back to Keith, to see if there's something formal that we can look at. I do know that advisory council is looking at ways to broaden student representation on it, going into the middle schools and even into the elementary schools. And trying to get the broadest set of recommendations. Because one of the things they know is that group tends to be kids who are doing well, right? And but they're aware of that. And they're far more self-aware than we are sometimes. And when you talk about the board not focusing and spending a lot of time on, that our students with disabilities when we talk, that is something that we do need to move closer toward when we have those monthly progress monitoring sessions with our goals and guardrails. We do have it broken out by subgroup. I don't think we focus enough on the whys of what's going on with the students with disability subgroups, or, I think we have and sometimes focused on other subgroups and trying to figure out, reasons or underlying root causes of why they are or not, performing, the way we thought we could get them, how we could meet their needs. But yeah, we need to spend more time focused on that particular aspect. And, and one of the big ones we hear also is monitoring IEPs. Right. So this is something that especially came up this year with the switch over to the new system, that they put the IEPs in, and to have gone to a school, for a parent meeting and found out that it was a month into school and the IEPs were not available, for the teachers. We own that, and that's not acceptable. And so I will say that Dr. Battle, once that got elevated, did say, we've got to do better.
Listen,
But
I want to jump in here on that because I totally appreciate her. One of her comments were, I think the board chair asked her, "Hey, what is it that you need?" Or it could have been somebody else, and she was like, "I don't know. I'm just getting this seat, and I need to process that." I want to go back on this because I was there when it came to Spanish speaking families and so forth. I don't toot my horn, but I was right there with some of the senior advocates when they were advocating for translators in the room on the meeting. Now, this was pre-COVID, so we didn't know COVID was coming, but we advocated for that. We advocated for public comment to be live stream. Like, these are some things we advocated for.
mm-hmm.
So if you're out there, if you're watching this on replay, please know that your voice can be lifted up and it can be heard. Please go to the meetings. Please ask. And I was a yeller and I'm a cursor. Let me be fair. I learned how to tone it down and say what I need to say. And there's a lot of things I've seen that has happened, and I'm very, very, very proud. But I'm very proud of Dr. Battle coming in and saying, "Listen, let me look at this stuff and see what we got and how we can change it, do something else." She only has about 10 months, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So I really respect that, because me and Miss Sherelle, we care about the special education population dearly, and I will fight you about them. Like, we want those babies taken care of right now, because those are different set of rules and laws that governs them, and we want to make sure that when they graduate, they ready. We don't want them to be halfway. Miss Sherelle said it. Target, what is it, 2023,
2022.
2022? We need that, because my son was part of that other Target 2021, and I fought like hell to get his IEP, so that he can get what he needed so that he can graduate, and he did, thank you Lord. And we are able to do what we need to do, but that's because of me and the parent who I am. But I want other parents to find that voice and be able to speak up for their kids, regardless of where they come from, how they look. Your baby deserves a decent education. Miss
So
Sherelle,
if I could
go
just real
ahead.
quick, so the importance of your voice is I'm going to tell you, because you can raise your voice and you can express those needs,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me start thinking about how to find solutions. And this is where I get like criticized sometimes for overreaching, as a board member. But I start to think about things when you're talking about that. I'm like, well, why don't we have some of the platforms? Google has great platforms where it has a variety of accessibility tools. So, if we had more meetings or forums or, information put out on some platforms that have these accessibility tools, the speech to text, the, whatever it is that we could have, we could start to overcome, some of these barriers. And, I don't need to like myself solve these problems because that is an administrative, aspect, but it plants an idea. So I can go to administration and say, hey, they have really valid concerns, these parents, and some of the conversations sparked some of these ideas. What could you think maybe you could do with that, or something like it? I'm a problem solver. So
But let me say this too, as a parent at home, because we the first teachers, right? We can go into our devices and change settings to help our babies. I know we was forced into this virtual space, and it could be good and bad, but as a parent, take advantage of whatever you have in front of you before they get into the school. Now I did it all, from getting out of bed to that pathway to school, to getting in school, having after school resources, and etc. But we got all these devices. We can change the setting. We can do some read aloud. There's a lot of things that we can do for our baby. A lot of basic stuff parents may not even know. But if you have what do they call, Miss Sherelle, good lead teachers and stuff like that, they have those conversations. They
Right.
tell you what different things are available for you and your child that help move them along, because I had some that were severely behind, some just a little bit behind, and so with those tools we was able to catch them up just a little bit. But just ask. We know closed mouths don't get fed. So just be willing to ask, and if somebody say no, well, ask somebody else. What is this? So I appreciate you guys, you know, making sure that voices, the parent voices, the community voice, let me not say that too, because even if your child graduate, you still a taxpayer, you're a voter, your voice still matter as well. But for the families who have baby that's getting ready to come out, your voice is super important. And Tamara, I appreciate you for lifting that up. Thank you, Miss Sherelle, as well, because if if you don't say that, we don't know. And so ask your neighbor, this going on at the school. Could you tell me about it? Do you know about this program? How can I, learn about it? Like I said, Travis and Keisha, I really respect them for doing what they're doing with having these meetings on Thursday to kind of educate us. And we can ask questions, not being not asking everything. So you can ask these questions and so forth. So I really appreciate that under y'all leadership right now. Big kudos to that. If anybody, Miss Sherelle, I'm gonna give it back to you, but if anybody have any question, please raise your hand. Tell me if you got a few more minutes, we'll let You can ask a question and go from there.
Alicia has a question.
I do have a question. Hi, this is Alicia DeCriscio speaking. How are you?
Hi, Alicia.
I am a parent at Barack and Michelle Obama Academy. I'm the Go Team chair there. I'm also the vice chair of the Jackson Cluster Cats. So you probably know I'm going to ask about redistricting. Recognizing that our middle and high school are over capacity. So number one, wanting to know your thoughts on redistricting in general and solving for that problem. And then two, one of the kind of major recommendations this past year has been to kind of carve out part of the Jackson cluster and move it over to Carver because it's right next door and that makes geographic sense and also number sense. But one of the pushback of our community is the purpose-built contracts at the Carver cluster and how it's not necessarily fiscally responsible to send more kids into those contracts, as well as if they're not working academically, why would we force someone out of a traditional school into a contract school? I would just love to know your thoughts on that.
I'll go backwards. So when I had breakfast with the board this last go around over at Carver, it was with Carver Early College and STEAM. And the high school students, we were broken out into little small group tables. And the first group I sat down with, the very first young lady that spoke, she pointed to the table where the agenda was. And she said, "See these two logos? It shouldn't be like that." Meaning the two different high school logos. There was a lot of conversation about how, no matter how much they tried to, get the kids working together, socializing, interacting with each other, that they were just structurally othered. Like the early college and the STEAM, they were others, they weren't part of the same school. And I remember talking to the new head there at Purpose Built and saying, "I don't know how you get over that. It's a structural issue. I don't know how you get over that." I believe that, we need to have one Carver, and anything that has to do with, potentially moving kids over, into that cluster has to be in light of what are we going to do to heal that cluster, to make it whole, to make sure that if the contracts are not yielding what we thought they would be yielding after 7 years, that we have the guts to renegotiate that. To if these are not about adults. Again, I think we're setting expectations on the wrong people. We're not there to serve the people who hold the contract. We're there to serve the kids that are in the building. And so that's going to be one critical aspect before you can talk about anything else. But I do think the Carver cluster, once we can heal that, is poised to really take off. What I really want to see people doing, rather than dreading a redistricting, which I'll get to in a minute. I would love to see people get hopeful, get like I did yesterday with the West Highlands people who were getting excited and hopeful about the future of Boyd, sending their kids to Boyd, and just about how, the great things that they would, they want to come in and work with the, the parents that are still there, or currently there. I think that if we can spark that kind of excitement about building out Carver, which if you remember, Alicia, that's kind of what they did with Jackson, back when Decatur High School closed for transfers and that little piece of Kirkwood was zoned back out of Grady. There was a groundswell of people who said, okay, all right, let's make the best high school, the best cluster we can. And I would love to see that level of excitement and joint effort go into Carver, because we really can do some spectacular things. I've heard things like a dual immersion cluster. I've heard things about the arts, and I want us to see that happen so that we can recapture the kids who are not going to their zone schools. Now, to go back to the Jackson piece of it, the Jackson part is different than the Midtown part because of the difficulties of us not having attended to the Carver issue for so long. I think that they're a little bit behind the sort of, not much, but this sort of dire overcrowding situation that we see at Midtown right now, but they're not far behind. So I do think that it's a bigger conversation. And here again, everything affects everything else. It's not just like, you can make one move and fix things without it having ripple effects on a lot of other people. And I think I said pretty publicly when that was proposed last year that we weren't ready for that in Jackson because of the work that we had to do over in Carver. But it's time. It's time for that work, and I just hope that we can amass people together and get excited about building the next great thing. Because I do think Washington, Jackson, and now Douglas. I really do think that we've got some momentum. We've seen how it's worked in the past in our own district. So I'm excited. Did that answer your questions, Alicia?
It does. Thank you. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
Well, Tamara, I most definitely appreciate you coming on. Like I said in the last conversation, I most definitely allowed it I reached out to all of the people who are running, and I wanted them to be able to come and have a conversation, and be able to hear from the community what their concerns are. We appreciate the work that you and the board is doing. We really appreciate Dr. Battle being here, and we are hoping we know she'll do great work these couple of months. Any closing remarks? Could you tell us about early voting, and how we can help get involved?
Yes, so early voting starts October 16th. I gotta lay my hands on all the dates. It'll take me a second. But it starts October 16th. Election day is November 7th. This election, because it's unusual, right? This is the first time we've had just school board on the ballot. It's going to be about getting out the vote. So it's a ground game. It is calling your friends, doing all of your notifications, to people about why this is super important. Why? Because we're getting a new superintendent, we don't need to have a hard reset of the board. You have to have people there being able to support a new superintendent and know how we got here. And just the fact that we all have to work together across the city. And again, this is a citywide seat. And I do take that seriously about trying to unify the city, around, because it is going to take all of us, to make Atlanta be, what could be a national model. And I know we can do it. But yes, it's just going to be letting people know that there's an election, that it's important, that their children's futures depend on it, and getting people out to vote. And if anybody, if you know anybody who wants to sign, my campaign manager she'd kill me if I didn't ask for people to reach out. If you want to sign, if you know somebody that wants to sign, if you want to donate, if you want to knock doors with me, if you want to help phone bank, if you want to contribute, that would be great, because my main opponent is going to have access to a lot of PAC money. The last way it happened, to be able to hire those paid canvassers to go out. But my campaign is grassroots. Almost all of my donations are from City of Atlanta voters. I don't have any special interests funding me, just like you guys. I'm not beholden to anyone. And because I am not looking for a career in politics, I can't be influenced by politicians and other aspects of government. So I only serve you, and that's about it.
Well, that's good to know, because that's right up my alley. Like we really do care about the people supporting the people in the community. And we understand that all that stuff is there, all that, you know, the politics, the dark money. I did this before. I know it's there. I know it can happen.
Yes, you do.
I really appreciate you coming on and being able to have a conversation. Hopefully in the future, I know y'all are gonna get really busy, but I do plan on holding space in the future where any of you guys can come as we're trying to get people out to go vote and be able to share thoughts, updates, talk about issues that are very important, because even after the election, the work still continues no matter
Yes.
who's there, you know. And one thing, I'll close here, I appreciate what you said about, you know, you're here for this time, but the policy will live on. So I really appreciate that, because that speaks a lot about, you know, how this goes. It's not about you as the individual, it's about these policies and how these policies affect the people in the community for the good or not, you know.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that. This, if you go back, if you're watching this on replay, this was a conversation with Tamara Jones. Hey Sherry, did you have a question? Oh, you came off mute. Okay. So this is a conversation with Miss Tamara Jones, seat 7 at large. Y'all go check her out. And until next conversation, be blessed.
Thank you. Thanks to
Yeah.
everybody.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Have
Have a
good
great
one.
day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Grassroots campaign.
Hold on. Let me